School holidays, or as those in the US like to call it, summer vacation. Okay, so as this airs on a Monday morning here in Sydney, Australia, we are going into 6 weeks of vacation time with the kids. Oh my goodness. The kids are off school for 6 weeks now. This is our summer break. The days are going to get long, and I think the phrase "I'm bored" might as well be on repeat for some families. I've heard it a few times already. So if this sounds familiar to you, you're in the right place. And also, if you're not even in the southern hemisphere, if you are in the US or somewhere else in the world and you have a short break over the Christmas period, this will still be such a good conversation because I'm going to share tips and ideas for things like weekends or even stuff to use for those long car trips that sometimes you might take. So whether you love the unstructured freedom of, these kind of extended periods with the kids, or if you actually dread the endless complaints of like, what can I do? I'm bored, come and play with me, or, I want to go out and things like that. Well, I'm going to dive into some tips that I think can really help navigate these times of kids' boredom, like the ups and the downs during what we're going to have is this really long break. And actually, the reason I wanted to do this episode specifically is because boredom is not actually the enemy. We kind of all think it is, and we dread it, and we dread our kids saying that they're bored. But actually, it is one of the biggest keys to creativity, to things like inspiration, even fun and emotional growth. Just stick with me if that sounds a little bit crazy. So today I'm going to explore how we can embrace boredom with emotional intelligence, of course, how we can manage some of those whiny moments without losing our cool, and how to turn these school holidays into something we all actually enjoy. So welcome to the Emotionally Intelligent Parenting Podcast. If you're new here, welcome. I'm so glad you have stumbled across my little corner of the globe here. I'm Stephanie Pinto, and I'm a mum of 2 here in Sydney, Australia, and I'm a best-selling author, an award-winning coach, and a podcast host, of course. And obviously, I love all things emotional intelligence. Now, although we are far from perfect as parents and as a family, and we still have big emotions from time to time, meltdowns are few and far between. Compassion and listening and problem solving are our go-to strategies when things kind of go a little bit crazy. And generally, our home is a really nice, calm place to be. We're not unicorns. This isn't anything crazy that like we have special kids or anything like that. It's just that my husband and I have learned about emotional intelligence, continue to learn about it, apply it to our relationships and our kids and ourselves. And that makes things are a whole lot easier for all of us as a family unit. So there's my little spruik for why emotional intelligence is so amazing. I'm glad you're here. And as usual, before we begin, I want to acknowledge the Darug Nation. They are the traditional custodians of the land on which I live, work, and record this podcast. I pay my respects to all First Nations people, their elders, and their ancestors, and I acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and I stand in solidarity towards a shared future. Okay, let's just dive straight in. Now, this is not going to be a long podcast episode. I just have a few ideas and things that I know we have used in the past. Parents that I coach have used as well when I've given them advice and some tips and things like that, and they have found that it has benefited them and their family. So I thought, why don't we put some of these kind of tips and ideas together just to make these next few weeks, or maybe it's just the weekend for you and you've got a ton of work on and your kids are going to be bored. Like whatever is happening in your life right now, I think these are going to be really helpful for you. So let's jump straight in. The first one is, this is kind of a little bit of a way to help us with managing our emotions, which obviously is a big part of emotional intelligence. We need to be able to manage how we respond or react to our kids when they say they're bored or when they're bugging us to do something or go somewhere, and maybe we can't because we have work even though they're off school. So this first one really is around reframe boredom as an opportunity. So we can talk to our kids instead of being like, oh, being bored is so awful, or, I don't care, like that's just how it is. Instead of kind of having that reactivity, which sometimes we do because we're human, instead of that, can we talk to our kids and even just for ourselves about how boredom is actually not the enemy. It's something that really can spark this creativity, maybe even like resourcefulness in our kids, and some problem solving skills, like something that's going to make their brain tick, if you know what I mean, right? It is definitely okay for kids to feel bored. This is, I think, kind of falls in one of the bucket of emotions that a lot of us probably learnt were bad as a kid. We learned that things like anger and frustration or anxiety are bad emotions. I feel like boredom kind of fell in that bucket as well. It's obviously an uncomfortable emotion. I'm not saying it's like peachy and we love it, but there is this sense of like restlessness, and boredom isn't comfortable, but it's not a bad emotion. So we can like give our kids we can share with them how we understand it can feel tough or annoying, or they don't know what to do. We can kind of validate that, but we can also share that it is okay to feel bored, and we can teach them actually it's more like a chance for them to create a way to entertain themselves, right? So I know this sounds like I'm splitting hairs, but I think this really kind of helps us to reframe when our kids come up to us and they say they're bored or they want to do something and we don't have time or we can't go somewhere. Then it helps us to feel maybe less stressed or less frustrated with, the situation. So first one is, can we reframe it to ourselves as an opportunity? Can we reframe it to our kids as an opportunity? And think of these words like creativity, fun, playfulness, problem solving, and like I want to say like innovation, like thinking of something new, interesting, and fun to do. It's almost like a challenge. Okay, so that's a bit of a like maybe a mindset point to begin with. I want to say this second one is pretty practical. So it's not so much on the reframe and the mindset and the mentality of it. It's like, okay, let's think of something practical here. This is really cool. I remember specifically a parent of 2 boys did this, and she messaged me literally the next day. She was like, Steph, this is such a game changer. Like, we had the best day and I got some work done and it was so good and I didn't have the boys like bugging me. Anyway, so my number 2 is create a boredom buster, like a jar of ideas or a list of ideas. I always say to parents, no matter what we are talking about in our coaching sessions, I'm like, please get your kids in on the activity or the plan, whatever you're doing, or even solving the problem. Now, this might require a little bit of like preemptive or like proactive planning. You can still do it in the heat of the moment when your kids are like, I'm bored. But I think this is really something great that you can do maybe the night before or in a quiet time, maybe even when you're having morning tea with the kids or you've given them some lunch or something. Then you can like grab out a piece of paper, you can get them to cut it into different little squares or something like that if you're going to do a jar, or you can just like make a list if they're older kids and they just want to type something out. Actually, even for young and old kids, use ChatGPT. Use something that's gonna, I have done that so many times. I've typed in like, this is the time we have, this is where we are, or this is what we can do. Like, please give me a list of 10 or 20 ideas that we can do. And it's so good. Like, obviously there are some that are totally impractical or irrelevant, but most of the time you think, oh my God, we haven't done that in ages, or oh, that's a really good idea, I didn't even think of that one. So that's my second point, is create this boredom buster jar. It's fun to do with kids. Yes, it means you might need to take 15 minutes or I don't know, 5 minutes to do it with them. You might be suggesting a lot. If you have younger kids, you might give the older kids the reins and say, whatever it is that either costs nothing or that means we don't have to leave the neighborhood. I don't know, like give them criteria and then think, okay, what are some, like, I want to come back and see 10 or 20 ideas there. It doesn't matter how crazy they are. You never know. Like, let's just do a giant brain dump. So that's really cool. I think a tip there is to create like a mix of independent activities. So that could be like reading or craft or jumping on the trampoline or creating what do we do all the time? We create like a base or a fort, or we create like an obstacle course in the lounge room, like floor is lava kind of thing. A mix of those, but then also some collaborative ideas, things that we maybe do together, like cooking or like a family board game and things like that. Okay, so number 3 is encourage free play and unstructured time. So this means we're talking to our kids about how important it is to let them know that they need time that is not overly scheduled. Okay, it's time where they can engage in like open-ended play, maybe explore their interests, maybe give them time, give that boredom time to kind of like settle and plateau for then an idea to like burst into their mind. Oh my God, I could organize my room or declutter my wardrobe or go next door and ask the neighbors' kids to play, that kind of thing. We actually need to have a lot more unstructured time than we actually currently do have. And I'm going to talk about screens and stuff like that. And I'm not against screens, but I think just in this day and age, we have so many activities on, at least here, like generally where I am and the families I'm around, so many activities, so many things after school that the kids have to go to, swimming lessons or soccer practice or piano lessons. Like it's just a lot. So it kind of stands to reason that our kids maybe are not necessarily used to being bored and having nothing to do, because there's like an abundance of stuff that now, like even, like I said, screen time, it's at our fingertips. And like TV, there's heaps of things. So I think we need to encourage this free play, this unstructured time, and talk to our kids, maybe not in the heat of the moment saying, oh, mum or dad, I'm really bored. Well, you need unstructured time. Like talk to them over the dinner table or when you're in the car or at other times, just so you're building that awareness and that's becoming like a normalized part of, stuff that you talk about and part of your family culture. So I really like that one. Unstructured time and free play and just kind of hanging out or like, playing out in nature and like making a mud pies with sticks, like that kind of thing. It really does build creativity and independence and imagination. And I know there are lots of people who believe that stuff is lacking in this day and age. So there's my kind of vote for that one. That's number 3. Number 4 is balancing screen time and other activities. Like I said, I am not against screen time. Already, my kids have had several hours of screen time. And that can be computer time and that can be TV time as well. If you haven't caught some of the other episodes on the podcast around how we removed YouTube, I would highly recommend that one. We also had obviously, like I spoke about why, the dangers of YouTube. We also removed Roblox, I want to say 1 to 2 months. No, it's not been 2 months. I don't know, maybe 1 to 1.5 months ago, for a very similar reason, kind of hidden dangers, risks, predators mainly on that platform. And I know there will be others, but that was the one that our kids were on. And so we said no. And remove that one. I think we did. Did I do a podcast episode on the one? I'm going to have to look. But we did have a beautiful woman from the US who is like an expert in keeping your kids safe online. That's Farida Shahid. And I'll have to check what episode she came on and spoke about, obviously, how to protect your kids when they're online. So it's not that screens are bad. It's not that, there are families out there who really rely on screens for their kids' regulation. Maybe they're working tons as parents. Maybe their kids are neurodivergent and that's a really beneficial way for them to regulate and decompress after a long day. There are other families who ban all screens and devices and have gone back to really how it was most of the time when we were young. We didn't have iPads. I think we had one computer in the house and we had to share it, that kind of thing. So everyone is different. I do believe in a balance. That's what I want to say. And I think we have to acknowledge that screens can be really helpful, especially if there are important things that parents need to do, like cooking or work calls, or if we, cannot be with our kids 24/7. And this is like a bit of a respite. I think that's okay. Let's not demonize it. So, but again, the emphasis for balance where possible. That might mean you have a day or 2 days or whatever of like tons of screen time, and then you have space on a Friday, or for example, and you're like, okay, guys, we're going to get out of the house. And I've said this, we're having a device-free day. And there is 15 minutes of grumbling and like, kicking their shoe and like, man, I'm really cranky. Well, that is okay. You're allowed to be okay with that rule and that boundary. And we're doing this for a good reason. So anyway, I won't say any more about that, but there's obviously lots of different activities you can suggest instead. Okay, we're at number 5 out of 6, so we're almost done. 5 is building our emotional intelligence by tolerating whinging, whining, complaints so that we, manage our emotional state and we take care of our nervous system when we do have kids who obviously, really can't handle and can't tolerate being bored. I kind of just talked a little bit about why, because we're in such a busy, I think, time of, I don't know, like our generation, our kids' generation are often very busy and on the go a lot. So it makes sense that they're going to whinge, they're going to complain, they're not going to like it, it's going to be unfamiliar, it's going to be hard for them, and I think their brain and their nervous system to tolerate. So let's not, I want to say, demonize those emotions that come when we say, when they say I'm bored, and we say, well, let's figure something out. It's okay to be bored. We have to teach our kids, but also ourselves, that this is a normal reaction. Okay, we can talk about and maintain for ourselves staying calm. Obviously, the more empathetic we can be, it will sort of build that resilience, I think, and that emotional regulation in our kids. If we are managing our own emotions, if we're not yelling and snapping and biting back and being like, you think you're bored? Try being raised in the 80s and like we didn't have iPads and, tablets and all that kind of thing. I think that is unhelpful. But again, we're human. So if you have those moments, like, please do not beat yourself up about it. Okay. The last thing I want to say is we can share how modeling patience and validating our kids' feelings, like, I know it's really hard when you feel bored, and it's hard to find things to do, and that is really tough. I think that does help our kids to learn how to handle their discomfort better. So if we can be patient, if we can validate that our kids are finding it tough, then that is, worlds apart from some of those snappy reactions that we might have tended to use in the past. So think of, basically, a wrap up for that number is dial up your emotional intelligence, so that you accept and validate and honor how your kids are feeling without reacting, but then move into, ideas and creativity and problem solving and stuff like that. Okay, so the last one is, number 6 is involve your kids in planning their days. So I did talk a little bit already about kind of getting your kids buy-in by creating a list together. I think giving kids some responsibility for choosing or planning activities is like amazeballs. I really think if we get our kids to pitch in some ideas, like, more often than not, they will have wild, exciting, left of field, really cool creative ideas that we never would have thought of because we're boring old parents. I'm just kidding. But if we can give them, pass the responsibility over to them, be like, hey, you have good ideas. I'm here to help you, but have you got any ideas of things that we can do or you can do, for today or the next day or over the next few weeks? So what this can really do is often reduce the pushback that we often get from kids. It really, really does foster this kind of concept or idea of cooperation. I often talk about the fact that we are the Pinto family and we help each other and we look out for one another, and, we kind of take the load and share the load sometimes. So it really fosters that cooperation. And also, I think it just helps us feel a little bit more kind of engaged and like we're working with our kids rather than against them. So that's probably one of my favorite points there. It really reduces that resistance or the pushback if we're getting our kids to think of some ideas again, together as a team, put them in a jar, write them on paper, stick something on the fridge, whatever you want to do, whatever your kids want to do. And like I said, use things like the internet. And, I think all these kind of AI platforms like ChatGPT and things like that, they can be really helpful. So I think what I want you guys to take away from this, I really want this to be encouraging that you can definitely embrace the challenges, because there are going to be challenges, and the joys of these school holidays. And again, if you're not in the Southern Hemisphere where we've got 6 weeks summer break, then at least this might be helpful for, like I said, a long car trip or something, or you're going away for a period of time, or a plane trip, I don't know, things like that. I think we can really be proactive about thinking of, okay, our kids are going to be out of their normal routine. What is that going to look like for them? Is that going to be unfamiliar? Is this something that they're probably going to struggle with? How can I help them? It doesn't mean you have to take it all on your own shoulders and do everything for them. I'm not advocating that at all. But I think that there's a lot that we can do to kind of minimize the frustration on both sides of when our kids feel bored and don't know what to do. But yeah, there's just some different tweaks and changes I think we can make to kind of make this period of the year a lot more joy-filled. Oh, okay. One thing I forgot to mention, guys, is that I would love to, personally for me and my kids, get them into some kind of volunteering and giving back organization, or like doing some of those activities. What I just literally did 2 minutes ago is Google, I think, like kids volunteering activities or places in Sydney. So you could do it for your area. I came up with kidsgivingback.org, and then it had tons of ideas, tons of articles and things like that. And then there was also a Facebook group or a Facebook page about kids giving back. Like, I think, yes, this takes a little bit more organization, a bit more thought, and, we have to have spare time to take our kids there and look into it and everything. But I just also think that this is possibly a really nice way to spend, a couple of days out of the 6 weeks doing something for our community and for those people who are in need. So I'm just going to kind of drop that as like a last little idea. If that is something that resonates with you and maybe you ask your kids and they're open to it, then that might be awesome. Okay, so that was a bit of a quick list, a short episode today. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to remind you guys that this is coming out the week of Christmas, and I do have a couple of huge Christmas courses on sale. Well, they're not Christmas courses. It's a Christmas sale for my courses. One of probably the most popular one, is From Reactive to Responsive Parenting, and this is how to end the yelling with emotional intelligence. So if you do feel like a yelly, snappy, shouty parent, and I have been there, please look at that course. It's 50% off, so it's normally $97 US, and it's now $47. And so if you feel like sometimes you're yelling at your kids a lot, they're not listening, they don't listen unless you yell, maybe you're overwhelmed by your kids' challenging behavior, maybe you feel guilty after losing your temper and wishing you could stay calm, and maybe you're struggling to figure out triggers, there's a whole lot that I have packed in. If you say yes to any of those, then please look at that course. Like I said, it's 50% off, and it's probably only going to be for the rest of this week. So, and then I'll do something different for January. Also, my other brand new course that only launched on December the 16th is From Blow-Ups to Balance. So if you have an ADHD kiddo that you live with, or maybe that you work with, so this is for parents and teachers, another one that's 50% off, same price. And this is if you live or work with a child with ADHD, maybe they struggle with big emotions or challenging behaviors. Maybe you find it really hard to know, how do I deal with impulsivity, aggression, distractibility, hyperfocus, other executive function challenges. And if you would like to get some more calm back to the home or the classroom rather than the chaos, then I really recommend you check out that one. So there's a couple of courses. I think I've got about 6 or 7 now, which is really cool. I'm adding to my courses all the time. I've got ones on anxiety, on EFT tapping, the nervous system. I actually also have another one that is very sneakily 61% off. This is how to raise emotionally intelligent kids. So that might be your starting place if you haven't done a course before, but you kind of want to learn more. Can't even get my words out. Okay, so that one's only $37. So I don't think that will ever be that cheap again. So please check where to get those down below, either in the show notes or the description on YouTube. But if you just go to stephaniepinto.com/courses, then you will find them there. Okay, thanks guys. Have a beautiful rest of your day. And as usual, keep raising those emotionally intelligent kids. And please be kind to yourself, especially over the Christmas break when things get a bit crazy and sometimes hectic and there's chaos. Just take a deep breath, because the world can wait. And when you are at your best, then you're able to give your best to your kids and your family. So take care of yourself.